Would the Roman army defeat the army of the Middle Ages? I know that many of us would like the author to answer this question, yes, and as an example he cited the professional Roman army of the era, if not Julius Caesar, then Emperor Trajan, when the Roman military machine was at the peak of its power. But in reality, while we all really do love Rome a lot, it's not such a simple question. Besides, the Middle Ages, depending on which events one attaches this era to, lasted about 1,000 years. Military tactics and the composition of armies all that time differed significantly. Let's start with the armies of the early Middle Ages. Frankly, I wouldn't bet on Caesar's or Trajan's legion. That was an army whose main opponent was the slow Hellenistic armies. Comparing these guys to medieval warriors is wrong. They'll get the full brunt of it, no options. Legions of the late Roman Empire coped with their task better because their opponent was quite mobile. They got lighter shields, which made them faster. The longer sword allowed them to reach the enemy better, and the replacement of 1 or 2 throwing spears pilums with 5 or 6 plumbago darts allowed them to hit the enemy at long range with the same or greater efficiency. The cavalry was more numerous and heavier in the Eastern manner. Archers were, both on foot and in small numbers, mounted. The Romans used field-throwing weapons better than anyone else in the world. Units of foot panniers were reintroduced because the enemy was making heavy use of horsemen. On the other side is a barbarian army consisting of non-professional soldiers, members of the tribe. They are armed with spears almost universally, often with throwing spears. Armor is not found in everyone, and those that are, not so good. The main trump card of the barbarians is the cavalry, numerous and using stronger horses, which appeared to them in the era of the Great Migration of peoples. As history has shown, more often than not it has done well against Roman cavalry. Purely nominally in this fight, the Quirites have a better chance. Their infantry is experienced, trained, perfectly equipped. Approximately in this way formed and armed East Roman army in the 5th-7th centuries chased the Germans throughout the territory of the former Western Roman Empire. There would be money for its formation and maintenance. Nevertheless, sometimes there were excesses. Thanks to strong Gothic and Alanian cavalry, barbarians defeated the army of Rome at Adrianople. Still, let us remember that it is in this era that the Romans have a slightly better chance. Also, let's note that Roman field artillery is not that good in a field battle. Our next opponent is Charlemagne's army. In its composition, it's still mostly tribal militia, but many of the big feudal lords have personal cohorts, much better equipped. It is likely that many of their warriors could match the experience and training of Roman veterans. Instead of spears, many prefer the small throwing axe to the Franciscus. In rich people on the quality and covered area of the body armor is already somewhat superior to Roman. But the most important trump card of the Franks is a cavalry significant in number and perfectly armed. By that time it already used stirrups, which allowed to better stay in the saddle. It is known that the Byzantine cavalry was constantly inferior to the Gothic cavalry, but after the appearance of stirrups began to regularly defeat her. The Franks of Charlemagne's time would have done their job even better. It seems to me that while the Frankish militia and warriors from the ducal vigilantes hold back the Roman formation, the Germanic cavalry will get rid of the enemy cavalry and then come to the rear, and the outcome of the battle will be predetermined. Approximately such a plan Goths realized at Adrianople, and their cavalry was smaller and worse than the Frankish. Let us now take the High Middle Ages, the beginning of the Crusades. This is where the backlog of the Roman legion begins to become total. Archers now accompany every army in large numbers. Their weapons are far more dangerous than they were in antiquity. Crossbows begin to come into use as well. The Roman army will not withstand a prolonged firefight. Its only chance will be to attack. It is traditionally believed that medieval infantry was poorly equipped and not at all disciplined, although this was not always the case, and in the confrontation with the Muslims in the Holy Land, the infantry of the knightly orders showed themselves well. In any case, the first onslaught of the devastated Roman ranks it must withstand. Wait not long, soon will enter into battle knights' cavalry. At this time the riders are protected by full ringed armor, and now they no longer hold a spear in their hand to stab from above. On the contrary, they clasp it under their arm and ram with it. The Romans traditionally coped poorly with heavy cavalry attacks, and they have no answer for such tactics in principle. After one onslaught, the fight would be short-lived. The Byzantine princess Anna Comnenus wrote that the Celts, that is, the Western Knights, were capable of breaching the walls of Babylon, and they would have done well with the legionaries. The only point that confuses me is the success of the Catalan Company in the early 14th century. These were Spanish mercenaries in the service of the Byzantine emperor, who first fought the Turks for him and then snatched up part of the empire for themselves. They managed to effectively counter both the Ottomans and the Byzantines, and they were mostly Almogavars, guys like the ancient spear throwers. However, the Spaniards were operating in the rugged territory of Anatolia. It's not a fact that they could withstand a proper mounted attack in a clear field. So in this case, too, I would not bet on Rome. Late Middle Ages, the time of Joan of Arc. The cavalry gets first incomplete and then full lats, and even starts protecting their horses, and the infantry finally grows up to her level. They are no longer militia, but professional mercenaries, and almost universally have armor that is already noticeably better than Roman armor. Long spades begin to return, halberds appear. Swords are not used as a primary weapon, but they have long been stronger and longer than Roman swords. Arrows have something like the English longbow, or alternatively they are warriors with heavy crossbows and pavis. At this time there is already limited use of firearms, if not handguns, at least cannons. But let's give the enemy a head start. This time they got stuck in the mud and didn't make it to the battle site in time. There is no Roman response to this. Even if it doesn't come to a cavalry strike, it's unlikely they can even get close to their powerful enemy because of the cloud of arrows and crossbow bolts. And a determined heavy infantry attack will sweep them off the battlefield. At this time, the Roman legionaries finally become whipping boys, a legend of a bygone fine time.